Hello friends, welcome to today's lecture on question banks. We'll do question banks from UWorld. So let's start. In this case, a 45-year-old man comes to ER due to epigastric abdominal pain and fatigue. He has similar episodes of pain in the past. Temperature is 98.8 degree Fahrenheit. Blood pressure is 128 by 69 mmHg, pulse is 92 per minute, respirations 16 per minute, and the physical examination shows mild epigastric tenderness and hepatomegaly. There is no jaundice or lymphadenopathy. Lab results shows hemoglobin to be low, mean corpuscular volume to be high, and the platelets to also be low, but the leukocyte count is normal. CT scan shows pancreatic calcifications and there is no evidence of gallstones. So, which of the following process is most likely responsible for this patient's anemia? Increased MCV is indicative of macrocytic anemia, and macrocytic anemia is mostly caused due to folic acid or vitamin B12 deficiency, which leads to diminished thymidine synthesis, that is, diminished nucleic acid synthesis, and thus the answer to this question is A. In this case, the patient's recurrent abdominal pain and pancreatic calcifications suggest of chronic pancreatitis, which is one of the most common cause of ethanol abuse. His hepatomegaly is due to alcohol-associated hepatic steatosis. The patient also has macrocytic anemia. This is evident by the low hemoglobin and elevated mean corpuscular volume of above 100 micrometer cube, which in alcoholics often develops due to folic acid deficiency within months or vitamin B12 deficiency within years. Both deficiencies lead to megaloblastosis, the underlying biochemical feature of which is a defect in DNA synthesis. Folic acid is a single carbon donor required for synthesis of purine and pyrimidine, example thymidine, bases incorporated in DNA. RNA and protein synthesis may continue relatively unaltered, leading to a state of unbalanced cytoplasmic growth with impaired cell division. Pancreatic insufficiency is also associated with vitamin B12 deficiency, as pancreatic enzymes normally cleave R factor from vitamin B12, allowing B12 to bind to intrinsic factor and be absorbed. Other choices were incorrect, as in choice B. The thalassemias are disorders which presents with reduced or absent globin chain production. Almost all thalassemia cases result in hypochromia and microcytosis, that is low MCV. Since here the MCV was high, this is not the case. In choice C, oxidative decarboxylation of pyruvate by pyruvate dehydrogenase requires TPP, that is thiamine pyrophosphate, which is a derivative of thiamine, that is vitamin B1. Alcoholics may be prone to thiamine deficiency and could therefore suffer from impaired pyruvate decarboxylation, but does not cause macrocytic anemia, and thus it was not appropriate. In choice D, vitamin B6 or pyridoxine catalyze the transaminase reactions by acting as a carrier of the amino group. B6 deficiency can cause an anemia, that is hypochromic and microcytic, that is having low MCV and sideroblastic. Thus, it was not appropriate. In choice E, iron deficiency anemia is typically hypochromic and microcytic again, and thus it was not appropriate. So, in summary, the underlying biochemical feature of megaloblastosis is a defect in DNA synthesis. In chronic alcoholics, megaloblastic macrocytic anemia can result from a nutritional deficiency of either vitamin B12 or of folate, which impairs synthesis of purine and pyrimidine bases. In this question, an external stimulus applied to a cell increases the activity of several enzymes, including dihydrofolate reductase and DNA polymerase. Which of the following immediately precedes the observed effect? Now, the increase in the activity of several enzymes is actually suggestive that the cell is in S phase, and thus the transition of G1 to S phase is actually regulated by retinoblastoma protein, and hence the effect that is preceded is retinoblastoma protein phosphorylation. An increase in the activity of enzymes responsible for DNA synthesis signifies that the cell is in the S phase of the cell cycle. The transition from G1 to S phase is one of the two primary cell cycle checkpoints that ensure quality control of the DNA. Cells with damaged DNA are not allowed to enter the S phase. Retinoblastoma protein is a regulator of the G1 to S phase transition. The Rb protein is present in one of the two forms, active, which is hypophosphorylated form, or inactive, that is hyperphosphorylated form. The resting cells in the G0 phase contain active, that is hypophosphorylated Rb protein. When the cell is stimulated by growth factor, activation of cyclin D, cyclin E, and the corresponding cyclin kinases like CDK4 and 6 occurs, and the Rb protein is hyperphosphorylated, which is that it becomes inactive. Hyperphosphorylated Rb releases E2F transcription factor, which allows the cell to progress through the G1 to S checkpoint. If the Rb protein is hypophosphorylated, that is active, it binds to the E2F transcription factor, and this complex inhibits the transcription of genes necessary for G1 to S transition. Thus, the active Rb protein serves as a brake that stops the cell from dividing. Other options were incorrect, as in choices A. The P27 protein is a cell cycle inhibitor. It acts during G1 phase by inhibiting cyclin-dependent kinases. Normal tissues contain high levels of P27, while malignant tissues contain very low level of P27. Upregulation of P27 would stop the cell cycle. In choice C, caspases are cysteine proteases, enzymes essential for apoptosis. Caspases are not associated with the G1 to S transition in the cell cycle, and hence it was not appropriate. In choice D, RAS protein is a component of the MAP kinase signal transduction system. It transmits the stimulus from the receptor on the cell surface into the nucleus. RAS protein is not associated with the G1 to S transition, and hence it was inappropriate. In choice E, protein kinase A is a component of the CAMP signaling system. It is not associated again with G1 to S transition, and hence it was also not appropriate. In summary, proliferation signals activate CDK4, that is cyclin dependent kinase 4, resulting in hyperphosphorylation of the Rb protein. Because hyperphosphorylated Rb is inactive, the cells are allowed to transition unchecked from the G1 phase to the S phase in the cell cycle. In this question, rats subjected to chronic inhalation exposure of formaldehyde develop nasal squamous cell carcinomas. Decreased activity of which of the following gene is likely to be found on cytogenetic studies of the tumor cells? Please note the word decreased activity. So the decreased activity of tumor suppressor genes will only lead to the cancer formation, and of all the choices listed here, only the option D, that is P53, is a tumor suppressor gene. Thus the decreased activity of P53 will lead to cancer in this case. Decreased activity of a tumor suppressor gene would predispose to neoplasm. Of the choices listed, P53 is the only tumor suppressor gene, and in normal individuals, P53 regulates cell proliferation. It acts during phase G1 of the cell cycle to detect abnormalities of the cellular genome. If there is damaged DNA, then the P53 will prevent the cell from progressing to mitosis, causing the cell to be arrested in the G1 phase. If the DNA can be repaired, then the cell will subsequently be allowed to divide, but if the damage is so severe that the repair is impossible, then the cell will proceed instead to apoptosis. P53 is nicknamed the molecular policeman because of its important role in guarding the integrity of the genetic material. The other choices were incorrect, as in choice A, the BCR-ABL fusion gene is a product of translocation of genetic material from chromosome 9 to chromosome 22. It codes for a protein with tyrosine kinase activity. The BCR-ABL translocation is the Philadelphia chromosome found in chronic myelogenous leukemia. And choice B, the RAS proto-oncogene codes a protein that participates in signal transduction for MAP kinase associated pathway. Overexpression of this gene leads to increased sensitivity of cells to mitogenic stimuli. This mutation occurs in a large number of cancers. In choice C, the ERBB2 gene encodes a protein with tyrosine kinase activity which is related to the epidermal growth factor receptor. Overexpression of this proto-oncogene is associated with breast and ovarian cancers. In choice E, expression of the NMYC proto-oncogene is amplified in neuroblastoma. All in all, the summary says that P53 is a tumor suppressor gene that controls cell division and apoptosis. It is inactivated in many tumors. Now, in this question, a 24-year-old woman comes to labor and delivery due to intense abdominal pain, vaginal bleeding, and decreased fetal movements. Her temperature is 36.7 degrees Celsius and blood pressure is high. It's 170/96 mmHg. And the examination shows a tense abdomen and a firm, tender uterus. Ultrasound shows a hematoma between the placenta and uterine wall, and there is no fetal cardiac activity. Lab results shows hemoglobin to be low, platelets to be low, and the aspartate aminotransferase and alanine aminotransferase levels to be normal. The patient is hospitalized and begins to bleed from her vagina, gums, and intravenous line sites. Blood is seen in her Foley catheter. Which of the following is the most likely cause of a bleeding? Now, this patient's presentation is more likely to be diagnostic for DIC, that is disseminated intravascular coagulation, that happens in pregnancy due to release of tissue factor into the maternal circulation. And thus the answer to this question is D. Now this slide shows the mechanism of disseminated intravascular coagulation. The mechanism, how does DIC occur in obstetrics? So if there is any placental damage, there is release of tissue factor from the placenta into the maternal circulation. This leads to activation of intravascular coagulation, and thus there is formation of microthrombi. And this circulating microthrombi either leads to organ ischemia or it can actually lead to fibrinolysis with increased D-dimer. And since there is formation of microthrombi, there is platelet consumption leading to decreased platelet levels or thrombocytopenia, and there will also be increased coagulation factor consumption leading to prolonged PT and PTT, and this all leads to bleeding. DIC or disseminated intravascular coagulation is a pathological loss in the balance between the pro and anticoagulant processes which is involved in the hemostasis. It is a life-threatening obstetric complication resulting from conditions that trigger massive activation of the clotting cascade. Risk factors include placental injury, example placental abruption, or sepsis, postpartum hemorrhage, acute fatty liver of pregnancy, and amniotic fluid embolism. In pregnancy, DIC is mediated by tissue factor, that is thromboplastin, which is found in high concentration in the placental trophoblast. Tissue factor is released from sites of placental injury, initiating the coagulation cascade, resulting in excessive production of thrombin and widespread intravascular fibrin deposition and fibrinolysis. Clotting factors and platelets are rapidly consumed, resulting in profound bleeding from incision sites or intravenous line sites and mucosal surfaces like gums and vagina. Now, this patient's presentation of vaginal bleeding, uterine tenderness, retroplacental hematoma, and fetal demise is consistent with an abruption. Placental abruption may result from severe hypertension as seen in this patient. An abruption that leads to fetal demise is the most common cause of DIC in pregnancy. Other choices were incorrect, as in choice A, DIC is a potential complication of amniotic fluid embolism, as fetal antigens from amniotic fluid can activate the clotting cascade in the maternal circulation. However, amniotic fluid embolism is associated with hypotension and cardiogenic shock rather than hypertension, which is seen in this patient. In choice B, sepsis caused by infections such as endometritis or chorioamnionitis can lead to DIC. However, sepsis is usually accompanied by fever and low blood pressure, which are not seen in this patient. In choice C, DIC is also associated with acute fatty liver of pregnancy, as microvesicular fatty infiltration of hepatocytes impairs production of coagulation factors. However, AFLP typically presents with nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain, and elevated liver enzymes, which are not seen in this patient. In choice E, uterine rupture most commonly occur in patients with history of uterine surgery, example the caesarean delivery, and presents with vaginal bleeding, acute abdominal pain, and loss of fetal station. Findings associated with uterine rupture include palpable fetal parts protruding through the disrupted myometrium. Since all this were not found, this was also not the appropriate answer. Now this slide presents the picture of placental abruption. There we can see that there is the placenta which is abrupted, leading to hemorrhage. Now, a 20-year-old man is evaluated for recurrent episodes of jaundice. He was separated from his parents at a young age and is unaware of any family medical history. The patient resided in several foster homes throughout his childhood but currently lives alone. His temperature is 36.7 degrees Celsius, blood pressure 120 by 80 mmHg, pulse is 72 per minute. Physical examination shows pallor, icterius, and mild splenomegaly. There is no lymphadenopathy or hepatomegaly. The remainder of the physical examination is normal, but the lab results shows hemoglobin to be low, platelets are normal, leukocytes is normal, lactate dehydrogenase is increased, total bilirubin is increased, direct bilirubin to be normal, and the aspartate aminotransferase and alanine aminotransferase are also normal. The direct Coombs test is negative. When the patient's RBCs are incubated in a hypotonic solution with glycerol, hemoglobin is released and the control sample does not release hemoglobin. This patient is at greatest risk of developing which of the following? Now, this line that the RBC is incubated in hypotonic solution with glycerol is actually suggestive of acidified glycerol lysis test, which is a clinical diagnostic criteria for hereditary spherocytosis, and thus the patient is at greatest risk of pigmented gallstones, as hereditary spherocytosis lead to chronic hemolysis, which further leads to increase in the bilirubin levels that chelates with the calcium and forms the pigmented stones, leading to risk for gallstones. Now, this patient's presentation with anemia, elevated lactate dehydrogenase, and indirect hyperbilirubinemia is all suggestive for hemolytic anemia. The lysing of blood cells when incubated in hypotonic saline with glycerol describes a positive acidified glycerol lysis test, which is diagnostic test for hereditary spherocytosis. Spherocytes demonstrate increased osmotic fragility in this test due to their decreased surface area to volume ratio. Hereditary spherocytosis is the most common hemolytic anemia due to RBC membrane defect, and the mutation in HS most often affects spectrin and ankyrin and the plasma membrane scaffolding proteins. Patients with HS present with hemolytic anemia, jaundice, splenomegaly, and the pigmented gallstones is one of the complications of any hemolytic anemia. In chronic hemolysis, the increased bilirubin from lysed RBCs precipitates as calcium bilirubinate, and this forms pigmented stones in the gallbladder. Patients with HS may also present with aplastic crisis due to parvovirus B19 infections. The other choices were incorrect, as in choice A, autoimmune hemolytic anemia has findings similar to those seen in HS, but AIHA is not heritable, and the patients have a positive direct antiglobulin test along with the propensity to develop autoimmune diseases such as systemic lupus erythematosus. Whereas in choices B and C, the abnormal adhesion of sickle cell RBCs to the endothelium and the subsequent obstruction of small blood cells lead to various injuries, which include splenic autoinfarction and femoral avascular necrosis. But a positive acidified glycerol lysis test is only classically describes the HS and not the sickle cell anemia. In choice D, G6PD deficiency is also associated with hemolytic anemia and indirect hyperbilirubinemia, usually due to oxidative stress, and the most common triggers include the drugs like sulfonamide or antimalarial agents, fava beans, and infections like viral hepatitis, pneumonia, or typhoid. But the peripheral smears of G6PD would have shown bite cells and the Heinz bodies and not the spherocytes, and hence it was not appropriate. In this question, a 46-year-old smoker presents to your office with a 3-week history of low-grade fever, weakness and neck swelling. Biopsy of the affected tissue reveals the following histologic finding. We can see here the main histologic finding where it is presenting the Reed-Sternberg cells with classic finding of owl's eye appearance. So, an abnormality in which of the following tissue is most likely responsible for this patient's symptom? Now, Reed-Sternberg cells is a classical finding for Hodgkin's lymphoma. Thus, the abnormality will be found in the lymphoid tissue. Now, in order to answer this question, you must be able to recognize the characteristic histology. The tissue biopsy shows numerous lymphocytes, small cells with dark, round nuclei, and a small rim of cytoplasm, meaning that it was likely taken from a lymph node. The key finding is the giant binucleated cell, a Reed-Sternberg cell, in the center of the slide. RS cells are derived from germinal center B lymphocytes and are the neoplastic cells of Hodgkin lymphoma. Reed-Sternberg cells must be present in order to make the diagnosis of Hodgkin's lymphoma. The two mirror image nuclei of RS cells are often described as having the appearance of owl's eye. Thus, the other options were incorrect, and also in choice A, the respiratory epithelium is a pseudo-stratified columnar ciliated epithelium that extends down to the level of the bronchioles. At the bronchioles, the epithelium gradually becomes cuboidal and then transitions to a flat single-celled alveolar lining of type 1 pneumocytes. In choice B, a goiter may cause neck swelling. Histologically, Hashimoto thyroiditis has the appearance of lymphocytes infiltrating between thyroid follicles. In choice D, Reed-Sternberg cells are not associated with leukemia. The classic finding in patients with leukemia is a peripheral blood smear with leukemic cells, leukocytosis, and thrombocytopenia. In choice E, both melanoma and squamous cell carcinoma can metastasize from the skin, causing lymphadenopathy. The cells on this tissue biopsy shows no evidence of squamous or melanocytic differentiation, however, and thus it was not appropriate. A 16-year-old girl comes to the office due to fatigue for the past few months. She attends high school and plays on the school soccer team but says that her endurance has decreased. The patient sleeps 9 hours a night and has been a vegetarian for the past year. She reached menarche at age 13 and has had regular menses for the past 6 months. This patient is not sexually active and does not smoke cigarettes but does report drinking 1 or 2 cans of beer a month. Her blood pressure is 110 by 60 mmHg, pulse is 70 per minute, BMI is 21 kg per meter square. Physical examination shows a well-nourished teenage girl with pale conjunctiva. Her hemoglobin is low, that is 9.2 gram per deciliter. Which of the following sets of additional lab findings are most likely to be seen in this patient? Now, since this girl is a girl of a childbearing age with regular menstrual cycle, this is indicative for iron deficiency anemia, and therefore the lab findings would be most likely indicative as of choice B, where the serum ferritin will be low, transferrin will be high, the mean corpuscular volume will be low, that is 76, and there will be no hypersegmented neutrophils with the normal serum folate. Now this girl has fatigue and conjunctival pallor suggestive of anemia, and it is confirmed by her low hemoglobin, and the women of childbearing age are mostly at risk for iron deficiency anemia due to menstrual cycle blood loss, especially the teenage girls. Then in this patient, the decreased consumption of dietary iron, that is due to her vegetarianism, is also an additional risk factor for iron deficiency. And in iron deficiency, the lab test shows decreased bone marrow iron stores, decreased serum ferritin, then there will be increased transferrin, decreased serum iron concentration, decreased hemoglobin, and appearance of microcytic hypochromic red blood cells, which is suggested by low MCV or MCH. Ferritin is an intercellular iron storage protein which is used as a serum marker for total body iron stores, and it is decreased in iron deficiency but is elevated in iron overload or during the infection or inflammation as seen during acute phase reaction. The transferrin is the protein that transports iron through the plasma. When iron levels are normal, then approximately 1/3 of circulating transferrin is bound to iron. In iron deficiency, the hepatic synthesis of transferrin increases, and therefore the blood test reveals increased transferrin, but the saturation drops due to decreased release of iron, and due to this the percentage iron saturation of the percentage saturation decreases. Then the other options were incorrect, as in choice A. The earliest signs of iron deficiency are low serum ferritin and high serum transferrin, which manifest before overt anemia develops. This pattern of finding is more consistent with alpha-beta thalassemia, which usually cause microcytic anemia with normal ferritin and transferrin levels. Now choice C, circulating transferrin levels would increase and MCV would decrease in a patient with iron deficiency anemia. In choice D, low hemoglobin level in the setting of a normal MCV and low circulating transferrin with a high serum ferritin is suggestive of anemia of chronic disease, which is often associated with infections and inflammatory condition. Other acute phase reactants, example C-reactive protein or sedimentation rate, are usually elevated in this patients. In choices E and F, hypersegmented neutrophils are characteristic of megaloblastic anemias, which can be caused by folate and vitamin B12 deficiency. Folate deficiency is unlikely in this patient as folate is found in many vegetable products, and although vegetarians are at risk for developing vitamin B12 deficiency, the depletion of vitamin B12 stores in the liver takes several years, and this patient has been a vegetarian only for the past year, and hence it was not appropriate. In summary, anemia in a woman of childbearing age is most commonly caused by iron deficiency secondary to menstrual blood loss, and this iron deficiency is associated with decreased serum ferritin and increased transferrin with microcytic and hypochromic red blood cells. Now, how to evaluate anemia? If there is decreased hemoglobin, After that, we have to see for decreased MCV or the normal MCV or the increased of MCV. If there is decreased MCV, this indicates iron deficiency or late intoxication or thalassemia or sideroblastic anemia. If it is increased MCV, then it indicates B12 deficiency or folate deficiency anemia. If it's normal MCV, then we have to further see for decreased reticulocyte count or increased reticulocyte count. If there is decreased reticulocyte count, then it is suggestive for leukemia, aplastic anemia, and anemia of chronic disease. This is all suggestive of diseases that is related to the bone marrow. And if there is increased reticulocyte count, then there we have to look for the hemorrhage, hemolysis, or hemolytic anemias like due to spherocytosis, G6PD deficiency, or autoimmune, or due to microangiopathic diseases. Now, in this question, a 54-year-old man comes to the clinic for 2 months of progressive generalized weakness and abdominal discomfort with early satiety. He has not traveled recently. He is afebrile and other vital signs are normal. He has pallor, abdominal distension, and massive splenomegaly. No peripheral lymphadenopathy. Pancytopenia is presented on his peripheral blood cell count, and bone marrow aspiration reveals dry tap. So, which of the following finding is most likely to be seen in this patient? This patient presents with diagnosis for hairy cell leukemia, and thus the answer is B, that is lymphocytes with cytoplasmic projections. Now, lymphocytes with cytoplasmic projections are seen in hairy cell leukemia, which is an indolent B cell neoplasm predominantly diagnosed in middle-aged men that infiltrates the bone marrow and reticuloendothelial system. Bone marrow infiltration and cytokine production cause fibrosis and bone marrow failure, resulting in pancytopenia. A bone marrow aspirate is usually unsuccessful, that is, we see dry tap. Splenic red pulp infiltration can result in massive splenomegaly, that is indicative by crossing midline or extending into left lower quadrant. Common manifestation include left upper quadrant pain, fatigue, weakness, fever, and recurrent infections. The diagnosis is made by bone marrow biopsy and flow cytometry, which has replaced TRAP or tartrate resistant acid phosphatase activity testing. The other choices were incorrect, as in choice A, intraerythrocyte ring forms are seen in malaria. The patient has no travel history and no fever to suggest malaria, and hence it was not appropriate. In choice C, myeloid cells and azurophilic rod-like granules are suggestive of all rods that is found in acute myeloid leukemias, and they do not typically cause hepatosplenomegaly. In choice D, heterophile antibodies are found in most patients with Epstein-Barr virus-induced infectious mononucleosis, which commonly presents in young adults with low-grade fever, pharyngitis, and cervical lymphadenopathy. There can be mild hepatosplenomegaly present. In choice E, ringed sideroblasts are abnormal erythrocyte precursors found in myelodysplastic syndrome and characterized by mitochondrial iron accumulation surrounding the nucleus. And patients typically presents with petechiae, weakness, and recurrent infections. This is all for today. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please do subscribe and share.